let's go ahead and begin. So hi, everyone. I know many of you, but I'm excited to also see a lot of new faces that I haven't had the opportunity to meet. My name is Abby Faker, and I work with the Read by Fourth team at the library. I am joined by my colleagues Lauren White and Simone Partridge, who also work with the Read by Fourth team, and we're all really excited to welcome you here today. So the Neighborhood Literacy Fund that we will be talking about today is a project near and dear to me because over the past several years that I've worked with Read by Fourth, I've gotten to know so many partners and community members who bring such incredible creativity and dedication to your work supporting young children every day. And so our team is just so truly grateful for the opportunity to support those efforts even more. And so today, we're here to talk about what the Neighborhood Literacy Fund is and how to apply. But we're also here to share a little bit more background about the origin of this work, the urgency of the literacy crisis, and to celebrate the power of community and working together. And so before I go any further at all with the presentation, I want to pause and say thank you. Thank you for your work and interest in supporting early literacy here in Philly. And thank you for taking this time out of your day to learn more about this opportunity. So I see some messages coming up in the chat already, but if you haven't yet had the opportunity, please drop your name in the chat. Tell us what brought you here today and tell us how you heard about the Neighborhood Literacy Fund. And so as you've probably heard, the Neighborhood Literacy Fund supports community-driven solutions to the early literacy crisis by awarding up to $2,000 for projects that help to grow Philadelphia's young readers. The initiative was born from a partnership between Read by Fourth, which is Philadelphia's early literacy movement, a committee of local community leaders and literacy advocates who led the design of this fund, with the generous support of Vanguard Strong Start for kids. So for those of you who may not yet be familiar with Read by Fourth, we're a citywide coalition of many, many, many partners working together all over the city to protect every child's right to read. If you're not yet a Read by Fourth partner, don't worry, totally fine. You do not have to be a partner to apply, but we are excited about this as an opportunity to meet new folks and new potential partners. So if you're not yet a partner and you choose to apply, we'll just make sure that we send you more information about what the coalition does and let you decide if it sounds like a fit. So you already know a little bit about the Neighborhood Literacy Fund. That's what brought you all here today. But today's information session is going to go into more detail, covering exactly what it is, application requirements, the nuts and bolts of how to apply, the selection process, and expectations for reporting. We'll also be sharing some of our favorite local resources for literacy change makers. So we hope that you leave today's session feeling more confident and excited about submitting an application. And we also hope you leave with a few more tools to support the young readers in your life. So if you have questions about any of these topics, you're in the right place. Feel free to put questions in the chat and know that we'll have time to answer any that we haven't covered at the end of the presentation. And I'll ask Lauren and Simone to keep an eye on the chat as well in case there's anything particularly timely or urgent we should make sure to answer as we go. We can certainly do so. So those who know and love Philadelphia know that the city of brotherly love is a well-earned distinction. And we know that the best solutions for the community come from within. One of Philadelphia's greatest strengths has been our culture of mutual aid, grassroots leadership, and scrappy can-do energy that propels so much of the positive things that happen in the city. But right now, many of our funding streams are not yet designed to support those grassroots efforts. And that's why we're so excited about this opportunity to support community-driven solutions to the early literacy crisis. So here's where we are now. Right now, over 65% of Philly's children are not reading at grade level by the time they reach fourth grade, setting them up to feel lost and potentially fall even further behind. And COVID has only made this situation more challenging. And we believe that this is an unacceptable number. It's more than a statistic. That number represents thousands and thousands of children in our city who are less likely to graduate from high school, who may grow up struggling to fill out a job application, and who will be shut out from learning and experiencing text, and will have one less tool for expressing themselves. But the good news is that we can change this. And there's partners like many of you who are on this call today that are already working to change this. So we see across the city, schools are already shifting how they teach reading to make sure that we're using the most effective practices. Advocates have been fighting for fair funding for libraries and schools. Sidewalk libraries are expanding access to books, and new policies are being passed to support literacy outcomes. Thousands have already joined Philly's early literacy movement, and the community has been at the forefront since day one. And so I'd like to pause now and ask, how do you want to help young readers in your community? You can drop your ideas in the chat. And we're really, really excited to hearing more about all the ideas that you have already. And so that's what the Neighborhood Literacy Fund seeks to do. We want to support the development of young readers and their families, because as we've said before, reading is the key to the life our children deserve. We want to engage and learn from unique community-driven solutions. No two readers and no two neighborhoods are alike. You know what works best for your community, and we hope to learn from you. And we want to give money to social change makers who may have limited access to funding. We want to invest in the people who are already doing this work. And so who can apply? One of the most asked questions, right? So the Neighborhood Literacy Fund is open to everyone. Great ideas can come from anywhere. It was really super important to us that the fund be open to anyone. Teachers, block captains, big brothers, librarians, aunties, grandmas, anyone who wants to help our children with reading. The only restriction that we have run into is that applicants cannot be currently employees of the Free Library of Philadelphia Foundation, since that is the organization that's awarding the funds. But if you work for the Free Library on the city side of the equation, you're good, you're totally eligible. So one overarching requirement is that projects must support the literacy development of children in Philadelphia, but there are lots of ways to grow a reader. And so one way to approach thinking about your project is to think about what are the specific literacy skills you intend to support through your project. And there are lots of possibilities here. And this graphic illustrates some of the essential early literacy skills or fundamental building blocks to becoming a reader. So as you design your projects and think about your application, we hope you take a moment to think about which of these skills is your project supporting. There's a link to this graphic on our website in the tips and resources section. But I think that this is really valuable info for all of us. So I'd like to take a few minutes to walk through it together now. So there's been a ton of research over the past 20 years that looks at how the brain puts together sounds and symbols and how kids learn to decode or pull the words off the page. Some of this either hasn't been known or hasn't been well known or appreciated over the years. And you may have started to hear the phrase, the science of reading again and again, which basically means we know that the brain learns how to read, and we know how to teach in a way that enables kids to truly pull the words off the page and understand and enjoy what they're reading. And so this graphic gives us an overview of all the skills at different ages that children need to acquire in order to become strong readers and writers. And so starting on the left-hand side in the purple column on the left, whether you're 0 or 3 or 9 years old, you need to be in an environment where you're exposed to lots of new words. Learning new vocabulary is also really connected to expanding background knowledge. You've probably heard before about reading comprehension, or the importance of understanding what you read. And having background knowledge is actually a really important piece of reading comprehension. So as an example, suppose you're reading about ancient Egypt, but you've never heard about ancient Egypt before. You don't know the vocabulary. You haven't had any visuals or pictures in your mind. And then you start reading about pyramids. It might be harder for you to take in than if you already have some background info. Thinking about myself, for example, if you gave me like a high school chemistry textbook, I could decode and sound out any of the words on that page, but I would have a really hard time understanding or getting anything out of that text because I don't bring the background knowledge to it. And so we know that developing background knowledge, which we can do in so many different ways, is really, really important to reading comprehension later on. And so finally, again, across all ages, we need to also support our kids with attention and motivation. They need to be excited about what they're reading. It needs to be relevant. It needs to resonate with their lives. We need to help them develop the capacity for paying attention and staying on the subject for a period of time. And our ability to do that, of course, varies and grows over the ages. And so going now to 0 to 2. So at these young ages, what we really want to do that support future reading is working on oral language skills. We know that kids are babbling and talking and singing, but they're also learning vocabulary and they're starting to learn the sounds and the patterns of language and through nursery rhymes or repeating what they hear from their caregivers and so on. So we want to expose our little babies and toddlers to as much language as possible because that prepares them to later see those words in print. And the other big emphasis in these ages is what we call print awareness. So they're not reading books, but they might be playing with books. They might be learning how to hold a book upright and to turn the pages and learning what directions the page goes. And I see several storytellers and librarians on the call today. And so I'm thinking about how so much of the work that you do already connects and builds to those skills. And when we get to 3 to 5, then we're in sort of the pre-kindergarten years. And what we want to see then is kids beginning to learn the alphabet. Can you name the letters? We usually start with the letters in our own name because those letters are really exciting and motivating to kids. We learn to write the letters, and then we learn to identify the sounds that letters make. Also really important at this age is what we call phonological awareness. And that's a mouthful, but all it means is your ability to hear the sounds within words. So if I say the word catnap, can you hear that there's 2 chunks or 2 big syllables, catnap? And a lot of work at that age with just recognizing rhyming. Can you hear when words rhyme in a poem or a nursery rhyme or a song? And then the next thing is, can you start to come up with your own rhymes? Like if I say cat, can you then come up with sat, that, rat, other words ending in that same sound? And all of that maps onto the skills of actually reading the words on the page. So then when we move into ages 6 to 9, now we're looking at roughly 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And we're looking at phonics, where I know the letter, I know what the letter is called, but I can begin to sound out the word because I know the sounds that the letters and the combinations of letters each make. So if I see C-A-T on the page, for example, I can recognize that, sound it out. Part of that is the next thing, there's phonemic awareness, where I can start to hear each of the individual sounds within words. And we want our children to have enough practice to be confident and fluent so they can read the words on the page smoothly. And so that when I read the words on the page, I don't sound like a robot, right? I sound like I'm just talking naturally. Students are not at that age spending a lot of time laboring over each word. And this fluency comes from practice, from reading known letters and sounds repeatedly. And then I love the last part. The big goal here is comprehension, that you can read and you can understand. You can learn about what you're interested in and motivated and excited about. And you can also express yourself and tell your own stories through writing as well. And these are all skills that will carry forward for a lifetime. So that was a lot of information, but I hope that it sparked for you some ideas about how the work that you're already doing or the projects that you might propose can really be deeply connected to the literacy skills that we want students to develop at any age. And so here now is a summary of what our selection committee, which is a group of partners, are going to be looking for. And so I encourage you to think about each of these elements as you design your project and highlight them in your application. So number 1, as we just described, the committee will be looking for a clear vision for how your project is going to support early literacy skills. Number 2, we'll ask you to describe your community connections. We're looking for applications from community members and organizations that have relationships that are genuine and deep in their community. Number 3, we'll look for limited access to traditional grant funds. The way we get at that is there's a question on the application asking for your annual budget size. And simply organizations with smaller budgets will get awarded more points on the rubric. And so here, If you're someone who's applying with a fiscal sponsor, that's where you'd make sure to put your own organization's budget, not the fiscal sponsor. If you decide to apply as an individual or this question is irrelevant to you, you can just put NA or not applicable or leave it blank. And as for number 4, it's important to note that we're looking to support literacy projects in every corner of the city. So the selection committee wanted to put an emphasis on a few regions, North Philly, West Philly, and Southwest, because those are areas of high need when looking at early literacy test scores. But that said, don't let your zip code stop you from submitting an application as long as your work is taking place in the city of Philadelphia. So some more details and logistics to know. So if you apply, you'll be notified the week of November 14th about whether your project was selected. And at that point, you will decide whether you want to be paid via direct deposit to your bank account or via a check that would come in the mail. There's different paperwork that you would fill out for either of those two options. If your project amount that you request is under $600, our finance department is able to pay that entire amount to you upfront so that you have the money to spend. If your project is $600 or over, we can pay most of the money upfront, 75%, but just need to hold the final 25% until after we receive your final report. So just keep that in mind as you plan and imagine how you'll make it all work. So another tricky thing to note is if you're thinking about applying as an individual and not through a relationship with an organization, then it's really important to understand that that payment might show on your year-end tax statement as personal taxable income. And we really don't want to cause problems for anyone. So we want to make sure that that is super clear. And so before you apply, we want you to look at the FAQ page on the website and read the section called How Do I Apply as an Individual? Because there's a few different ways that that could look depending on your circumstances and preferences. And then after that, I encourage you to reach out to me and we can talk over email or over the phone just to check in about any questions or concerns that you might have. So for the final report, we want to hear how things turn out, but we also want to keep it really simple for you. And so we're going to ask 2 overall questions. So we're going to ask, how did it go, essentially? Did your project meet the goals that you set out to achieve? Tell us a little bit about why or why not. And then the second question is asking for your advice about the Neighborhood Literacy Fund experience to help us plan for the next round. So were there parts that you found helpful? Were there parts that you found frustrating that we can improve for next time? We want to know. And we're going to let you choose how to answer these. The 3 options we've thought up so far, although we're open to suggestions, are 1, you can send us an email. 2, you can send us a brief video on your phone, submit that by email, answering those 2 questions, or you can schedule a phone call or Zoom link and we can have a conversation. So here are some upcoming dates to keep in mind. So first of all, if you have any questions about how to write a strong proposal, the Regional Foundation Center based at the Free Library is partnering with us to offer a proposal writing workshop on Wednesday, September 21st from 1 to 2:30. And you can register at the link in the chat or at the website on the same page where you registered for the session that we're in today. That is going to have some general tips for proposal writing that might be valuable for other applications you write in the future, but it will also be tailored specifically to the content of this application process. Applications are due Monday, October 24th. That is far enough away that if you're not planning to prepare your application right now, you have plenty of time to get back to it, but perhaps put yourself a calendar reminder so that it doesn't fall through the cracks. Award announcements, as I said, will be made the week of November 14th. And whether or not you receive an award, you'll be hearing from us that week, so just keep an eye out. And last, we have a list of recommended resources, some of which we've already shared. All of these are on the website. I want to highlight a couple on the left-hand side. The Early Literacy Essentials graphic that I walked through is there on the website, as well as some additional background information about the science of reading and how children learn to read. And I also want to highlight this one with the star that says Need Books, so that if you're looking for books for your project, There are other partners in our network that could provide books. You could potentially request books from one person, from one partner, and then supplement with funding from the Neighborhood Literacy Fund. We also highly recommend the Regional Foundation Center that has a star there. Lots and lots of resources and workshops they have to offer to help you find other funding and to help you develop proposals in the future. So the application link is live on the website. You will probably want to have a Word doc or a Google Doc to write your responses so that you can work on it at your leisure, copy and paste when you're ready to click submit. And that also will allow you to have a copy of the application for your records. And so that is all the information we wanted to share. And we thank you so much again for taking time out of your day to join us and learn more about the Neighborhood Literacy Fund. We see the work that you're doing out there in your communities. We value it so much, and we value you and your partnership. And we look forward to learning more and getting to know some of you better over the next few months as well.